Hello, and welcome to the 12 Days of Christmas series. My name is Joanna Daniel. I'm doing this series because we're in the holiday season and it's not a happy time for everybody. I know that some of us here have experienced trauma, and just going home to families can be a little bit challenging, can be a lot challenging. Some of you may have made decisions that you're not going home to your family this year. And the 12 Days of Christmas have always been giving you tools and ideas and tips to cope. If this is your first time seeing me, my name is Joanna Daniel. I'm the founder of Wounds to Scars, and we work with adult survivors of childhood trauma and women who experience abuse. We do that through conferences, retreats, and online courses. And really soon, you will hear about our conference that is in Swansea, April 8 to 9, and you'll be able to sign up for early bird booking really soon. So I want to talk about today what to do when your parents is dismissive. So you're going home and you're wanting to be able to have adult conversations. You want to be able to be treated as an adult, and you're finding that they're not doing that. I think there are many parents who struggle with making the transition from children to adult in their children's lives. And I don't know if this is especially happening in families where there's harm and sometimes toxicity. I dealt with the series over on our podcast, Stories That Shape Us with Joanna Daniel, and you can find that on Spotify and an Apple podcast. And I talked about that, and was a really popular series that I did. And so I wanted to just extend that here to help you if you're thinking about the holidays. What are you going to do? You're struggling with communication. You're struggling with being heard. What is the reason, and what are some of the things that you can do? So firstly, sometimes we're not heard, not because we're not communicating clearly enough, but sometimes we're not heard because the recipient of the communication, the people that we're trying to talk to, won't allow or can't allow themselves to hear us. And sometimes it's the block in them, it's the blocks that are in them that prevents them hearing us when we communicate, when we try to say how we want to say, the things that we want to say. So when we have grown up, we want to have mutually respectful relationships with our parents as adults. And the emphasis here is on relationships. And we can't have relationships without connection. And when you have a dismissive parent, there wasn't connection, emotional connection in early life. So there was no emotional connection in early life. There was no security. There was no feelings of warmth and connection that you experience when you were with them. The way they communicate with you was probably harsh and critical, probably brisk and even if it's not harsh in the sense that harsh in being abusive or damaging, it was harsh it was sharp. It was more tasking. It was more do this and do that and do that. And in the Christian community, as most of you are, it's God says this. And they put the fear of God into you, not the love of God, but the fear of him in you. And so you may have been taught that if you didn't do this, that means you were a bad child and God was going to do some things, right? And so now you're trying to navigate and figure out, how do I spend holidays? How do I go home and spend holidays with my family? You may have been changing, but they have not done any work to change. And so the challenge for you is, how do I spend relationship with families that I have no connection to? There's no emotional connection, but we have a sense of duty and loyalty and belonging. We want to belong. We belonging is an innate need that we have. And so you're learning, though, that what's happening over there is no longer acceptable and you don't really want to do it anymore and you're not sure what to do. So we feel comfortable in the presence of people that we're connected to. And we share our stories and tell our secrets to the people that we're connected to. We hang out with them and we cry and we laugh with them and we feel comfortable with them. And it's spaces where we can be vulnerable. And when we are vulnerable and it's not met with it's not met with empathy and connection, then it's a risk, and it's a very big risk, because when it's not met with that, then it creates hurt. And so parents are dismissive when they're not able to connect, when you have insecure attachment, with those people, with your parents, with your family members. And so you're going home for the holidays, you're giving up your time, and you're wondering, how am I going to do this? How am I going to navigate this? So here are some things that you can do. It's an acceptance that this is what it is, right? Now, accepting it doesn't mean that you are going to neglect you and your needs. Okay. It just means that the communication that I have with them has to be limited to a certain subject, to certain subjects area. You might be a little bit more mindful in how you share your thoughts and your opinions. A space is safe when we can be assertive, and everybody in that space that can be assertive. But there's some homes where being assertive is not acceptable. Being assertive is not, you're not allowed to, because there are parents who feels that they're losing control. And I know I'm talking to adults. You're an adult, and as adults we have opinions and we have views, and we should be able to express those opinions and views. Okay, because that's what adults do. We should be able to express those opinions and views. But when we are in environments where vulnerability is risky, and the risk has always been that the language that comes back is very shaming and very brisk and cold, then you've learned over time that vulnerability is not safe here. And so it's really important that you might go home and you might want to share a lot of stuff, but you don't know where to share it. You don't know who to share it with, because they're probably, one, nobody available to share it with, and two, if you share it, you might be judged or you might be shamed. And so it's not safe to do that. And when we want a sense of belonging, it makes us sometimes sacrifice the decisions that we make. We still have expectations of people that they can't meet. And that's why I say acceptance is really important, because when you accept that that is what they can give, it really helps you to navigate how you want to do relationship with them. Because if they can't do vulnerability, then it won't ever be safe for you to share your heart. And so how do you feel then in spaces where your heart can't be shared? Because it will be dismissed, it will be trampled on, and you'll be hurt. It means that you protect your heart. And it means that it means that you won't be able to bring all of yourself back home with you. So if you choose to go, that means I'm not going to bring all of myself. And so you're going to plan around how you're going to go and what you're going to do. And another thing to remember is boundaries. Boundaries is really important when you're going into a situation with dismissive parents. They're your ideas, your goals, the things that you want to do. If it doesn't align with what they wanted you to do, will be challenged. And I say challenge because challenge is a nice word. It might be more than challenge. So really take care about how the you that shows up. So your boundaries have to be tight. How you talk, what you talk about, how much of yourself you share, the resources that you make available, how you use your time, and all of that. What you bring, the how much work and things that you do when you do go. Do you go to rest? Do you go to help? Do you go to? And I know I'm trying to say this because I know it will differ according to culture. Different cultures have different expectations of us as children or as adults. And so your culture might expect that when you come home, then your parents will do nothing, and you and other siblings will do everything. And sometimes, depending on where you fall in the family and the role that you've had in your family, it might mean that nobody does anything and you do everything. And so if you were the caretaker, if you were given the role as caretaker in your family, where you looked after everybody, where you solve all the problems, not because you wanted to, but because you were made to, and you are the caretaker. And that's maybe you've been working through codependency throughout the year when you were away from home. And now you're going home and it's going to be put to the test, right? It's going to be put to the test. So making some decisions before you go is also going to be crucial. Making some decisions about what you do, how long you stay is going to be a good decision. Whether or not you stay at home. Some people don't stay in the same home. They'll stay in a hotel and visit home. That might not be acceptable, it might be frowned upon. But if it's going to be better for your well-being, then that's going to be an important thing to consider. So where you stay, how long you stay, is also going to be something that you need to consider. And how much you share and what you share is also something to consider. So those are things to think through and to boundary when you're going in, because the dismissiveness can be hurtful. And so you can go home for the holidays expecting warmth, but you come home, you're going back hurt. So it's important to know who my family is, who my parents are, what are the things I need to accept about them, what are the things that I'm prepared to accept, what are the things that is no longer okay for me, how long do I stay, where do I stay, what do I talk about, how much do I share, and how much of myself am I prepared to extend. Now, I know sometimes, as I said, we're in a Christian community, and sometimes we hear this through, well, is that obedient? Is that respectful? Is that honoring my parents? Just know that when you're, that's really good that you're considering that and you're thinking about it. That means you want to honor God, but just know that he loves you too, and he doesn't want you to continually be in situations where you're hurt, where you're harmed. He doesn't give you shame. So if there's anything that is dumping shame onto you, then that's something to think about, and to think about, how am I going to navigate myself in a space where I have insecure connection, it's not safe emotionally for me, and how do I manage and navigate that? I also want to end with this. I know sometimes it can be challenging to think about things around our families because we're fiercely loyal, and we feel like we need to protect. Working through it and putting some boundaries in place doesn't mean that you're not protecting, and it doesn't mean that you're not loyal anymore. It just means that you're also now thinking about yourself, and you're also now accepting the emotional connection that is not there, and the harm that you've encountered over the years. This doesn't mean that you don't love. And you might intellectually know now that the things that was done throughout your life, like sending you to school, providing a home, buying nice clothes, was love. But you might also now have grown to the place where you recognize that you need love, emotional connection, and you need to feel warmth and safety in their presence, but that's not happening. And so that's also good to know for yourself, because when you do, that's the place from which you can start to put some plans in place to take care of yourself, to look after yourself. And then you can show up in a space, the healed you, and interact in a different way that sometimes teaches people the kind of interaction that we want to have with them, and the kind of relationship that we desire moving forward. Thank you for joining me on this 12 days of Christmas. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.